This is Kugan Cassius for iFLTV. Delighted to be joined on this Friday morning or brunch. Have you ever had brunch, Frank?
Brunch. No, I don't eat till late anyway in the morning. I don't eat early till probably about 10 o'clock
Oh,
anyway.
11 to 12 is brunch, so this is
Oh,
technically
is it? Well, I have, well, 10 o'clock was 10 to it, 10 to 11. I don't know what you call that.
that's just breakfast.
Just, yeah, to get
That's all
my,
breakfast. How are you, Frank?
I'm all right, mate. How are you doing?
All good, all good. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a few things have gone on this week off the back of kind of last weekend. I know I've heard a couple of your interviews on TalkSport. I feel like TalkSport were blaming you for Tyson and Jake Paul at one point, Andy Goldstein and that. They were kind of looking for answers from you when it didn't really have anything to do with you. So I thought,
Well, I didn't actually. For once, I'm not guilty. I wasn't even there. Look,
um,
let's say how it is. We're all sensible people, and as I made it very clear, I've got great admiration for um, what Jake and Nikita. I think they're very, very shrewd operators. But I can't, as much as he trains hard and he trains to be a boxer, we can't equate him fighting Mike Tyson as a bona fide boxing match. And what I mean by that, of course, they got gloves on. It was 8 2-minute rounds. He's 58 years of age. The clue is in that to start with. But it's it's not boxing. It is what it is. It drew a tremendous audience because people bought into it, and as I've always said, Jake monetized the following that he's built up, and he's which very astutely what he's done. But that you can't compare that to, as much as he gave everything he had, you can't uh, compare that with a bona fide boxing match. That's a fact tonight. What I was sort of taking issue with not issue with Andy, and I like Andy Goldstein. I like him. It's a good show. But what I didn't, what what I don't get is people talking about they've been taken on and conned, because that's what he was saying. When What secrets were they? I mean, didn't we know Mike Tyson was 58 years of age? Didn't we know that he had, was it, 8 blood transfusions over the summer? I'm sure I read all this. It was in the newspapers. Didn't we know that he wouldn't be sanctioned to fight in most of the places around the world because of his age? Didn't we know that um, he's been he's an icon of boxing? There's no doubt about it. But didn't we know, or don't we know that he's making his living from uh, legally making his living from manufacturing marijuana plants, which on his own admission he's probably his best customer. All these things are known. So what did you expect going into it? It's like, when you go and watch what they call those, they have that football match every year to raise money for
Soccer
charity.
aid, soccer
And I
aid.
know they're not hitting each other, whatever, but they're old guys or celebs that are YouTubers playing these games, and it is what it is. So what do you expect? I just don't get it. No, I don't think anybody was sold anything. What it isn't, though, it is not. It's like when Muhammad Ali did the wrestling years ago. It's like George Foreman fighting 5 guys in one night and all this. It's not. You know, there are things that happen over the years. Senior team tennis tours happen and so forth. With boxing, obviously the difference is they're hitting each other, but it's not that it's not. It is not what we in the trade or anybody who knows anything you would class as a meaningful fight. It's meaningful for the people in it who are doing it, both in Mike Tyson and Jake. But for us in the trade, we don't look on that as a meaningful fight. I don't anyway. But good luck to them. People want to go and spend their money on it and do it. That's their choice. But don't confuse that. For example, what's happening next month at Riyadh season with Tyson and Tyson, the other Tyson, and Usyk and the guys on those cards and the fights that we're putting on at Wembley. Not just us, other promoters. Boxing is mostly a young man's business. That's what it is. People at that age should not be in the ring. It is nuts for anyone to even contemplate thinking that they were going to get some, thinking that Mike Tyson was going to deliver something. You know, before the fight, I was asked about it, and I say it time and time again. For one round, he'd be there. After that, he won. That's what we done against Danny Williams 20 odd years ago. Whenever we made the fight, I said to Danny at the time, and I'm repeating myself on this story. You know, you're going to have to wear probably in those days a couple of rounds of real. At that stage, I would say, you know, maybe vintage Mike Tyson throwing everything at you. You know, but he'd be blown out his backside by certainly by the end of the second round, and he'd be yours to win the fight. And that's what happened.
We saw a watered down version of Mike Tyson 20 years ago in those fights with Danny Williams and McBride. This is 20 years on against someone Jake Paul. I'm not saying that, but a 27-year-old athlete, we call him an athlete, that's in the prime of his kind of conditioning, etc., etc. So it was kind of what it was. It was a 27-year-old against a 58-year-old, and we saw what really we should have expected to have seen.
Yeah, I mean, it was what it was. But you know, what you can't say about from Jake, and I'm not going to say any different. You know, he trains hard. He has boxed pro boxers now. He's boxed Tommy Fury.
Yeah.
And Tommy Fury going into that fight was about 8-0. And it's very, you know, won a lot in the fight. It was 8-0, and it was what it was. Um, but you know, he's before you'd, you know, think about Jake fighting for a, you know, any like I don't know if he was British, or, an area title, British title, he'd have a way to go at the moment. But he trains and works hard. You only got to look at him; he's working these balls off. What I don't like about it, the thing I don't like as well is there was I didn't realise that afterwards there was no drug testing.
Mm. Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't really know the complete situation revolved around where they were getting tested beforehand and afterhand, but yeah,
Mm.
I see your
Well,
point.
that's what I understand. That's what I understand. Which, you know, again, that's what I'm saying. It's not if that is the case, and I'm not casting any aspersions or anything. But if that is the case, again, that wouldn't happen um, with the fights that most of us put on. That wouldn't happen.
Frank, in the aftermath of that, obviously there were some quite notable call outs for Jake Paul. I mean, the two in particular, obviously, one was your guy, Daniel Dubois, and one was Artur Beterbiev, who also had sent a social media message enticing Jake Paul possibly to have a shot at a world title. Why did your man, Daniel Dubois, send that message then, Frank? Did you know he was going to send that?
I didn't, but I mean, a lot of that was in jest. I mean, it's never going to happen. You know, it's not going to happen. I know it's not going to happen. So, forget about it. It's not going to happen. And, and he would be mad, um, Jake Paul to fight him unless it was for huge amounts of money. He passed all his tests to fight and whatever, but he's not going to get rated in the top 10 by the IBF. The IBF are not going to sanction the fight. So, live in the real world.
When I spoke to Eddie Hearn yesterday, and Jake Paul mentions Canelo a lot, and I asked him about whether Canelo would consider that, and he said that if it was actually serious, Canelo probably would do it. Right? This is what Eddie Hearn said about Canelo. Now, I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are about that, but that was he's obviously had a conversation, Eddie, with Canelo at some point, and I suppose the magnitude of the fight is the only selling point for Canelo. But I mean, have stranger things happened in boxing than Canelo fighting Jake Paul?
They have, and I hear what's being said. But look, for money that's generated, I'm sure there, what if you was a fighter, you would look at that. But you can't confuse what you mustn't confuse that with is. I mean, look, let's get it right. If Canelo was going to fight Jake Paul, what would the odds be for that fight? And it's not being disrespectful. What would the odds be? What's he had now, Jake? 10 fights? I don't know what his
12, I think
record.
he said 12
12
now.
fights, and
Yeah.
what probably half of them are YouTubers and Mike Tyson. So, even if it happened, what would the odds be? So, come on. He's as I say, very shrewd operator. And by the way, remember, they're not just him; they're promoters, and they did put some. There were some fights on the card which were quite good fights.
Frank, I don't know if you've seen from last night, but Nikisa with MVP has come out with some strong comments towards Carl Froch and Tony Bellew, questioning what they've done for boxing, questioning where Tony Bellew was after 12 fights, compared to what Jake's Paul has done for the sport at 27 years old. I don't know if you've seen any of that, but there's been a lot of back and forth, especially between Bellew and Nikisa, over that. I don't know if you've seen any of that, Frank, or not. It was only last night. And
I haven't, but let me just tell you something. Let's get something straight. What what Nikita's saying is, if they walk down the street together, who would everybody recognise? Earning capacity and the amount of fights they've had, the amount of fights, whatever it is, what would they do? But Tony Bellew is slagging him off, yet earning money off of him. He went out there working, was it for what bookmaker was
Paddy
it?
Power.
Paddy Power. They paid, I'm sure he didn't pay his own fare out there. I'm sure he got paid to do what he did at the press conference. And, if that's what he's doing, but stop, masquerading you're you care about everything and you're out there if that's how you care. What are you even doing there if you care about it? But what, and you're earning money. Because of Jake Paul, he was earning money last week. He was out there, wasn't he? Earning money. Didn't do it for nothing. He didn't. I know he didn't. He was out there earning money. So he's a hypocritical bastard. And what pisses me off with him as well, that's the same fella who's talking about after it was, the thing came out about Daniel. Oh, yeah, do this and that. This is the same Daniel he said was going to wind up in an ambulance after the fight with AJ. I mean, there was a nice thing to say, he's going to wind up in an ambulance. I mean, what is that all about? So who cares? And as for Carl Froch, I mean, you know what he is. I mean, it's just a rent a quote. And one thing's for sure, if Jake Paul picked the phone up to him and said, come on, let's fight, to either of them, could you imagine how quick they'd break the old sound barrier getting out to the States, them two?
Yeah, I mean, the likely chances of those two fights happening are probably highly unlikely, but,
Well, I'm just saying, if they did, you're telling me they would, they're strong principles. Come on, do me a favour.
Let's come on to Dubois, Frank. How close are you to announcing that fight? I'm assuming that card will be announced altogether on the 22nd, but have you finalised Dubois' opponent?
I think it'll be announced before then. It will be announced before, but we want to get it all. It's not. There's that. And I'm not going to say how many, but there's a number of really good title fights on the card, and obviously want to announce them all together. So it's getting a couple of things over the line, getting contracts signed, and then when everybody's comfortable, then it'll be announced as part of the Riyadh season show on the 21st in Riyadh.
I'm not going to start chucking names at you about this card because I've heard through some sources about this card. So I don't want to. I'm not going to put to you what I kind of already know because I want people to obviously wait for that announcement. So I will skip around that.
Did it sound exciting to you?
I'll tell you what. If that's the card, that is probably the best Riyadh season card there's been. As in all, do you know what I mean? We've had main events, obviously we've got Fury-Usyk coming up, but as a card whole, that is probably the best. If all the fights are accurate, which I believe them to be, then that's most likely the best Riyadh season card.
It would be unbelievable.
Absolutely. So again, speaking to Eddie yesterday about the Joshua situation, Frank, I think you by the looks of it, you gave it as long as you could before kind of moving on from that situation.
Yeah, look, there was no rematch clause. What happened was he said he wanted it, so spoke to Daniel and the team, and the bottom line of it was, why wouldn't you do that? For me, it would have been good for Daniel, and I'm in the Daniel business, and but he apparently has an injury, so whatever it was, anyway, it's dead in the water. It's irrelevant now.
Frank, I'm pretty certain I heard you made some comments or saw you make some comments to say that fight might not happen now at all. Did you say that?
Because you've got a situation when Tyson and Usyk fight on the 21st. depending on the outcome of that, and I've got my views what will happen. I think that Tyson will win, and if he wins, there'll probably be a third fight because it'll be one apiece. That's how I look at it. And if that is the case, it is what it is. If it's the other way, then there might be a unification fight. So the IBF, as you know, are pretty strict about what they do. So we'll be in a situation where Daniel, who fought, whose last mandatory was against AJ, he'll be due to get his next one next year. So I don't know how that gets slipped in, unless there's a load of step asides, and probably now, if he's out that period of time, he might have to get a win under his belt. AJ.
It does seem like, again, from Hearn's comments, that they are waiting now to see the outcome of that Fury-Usyk fight, which I suppose if he's not going to fight until May, June next year, it makes sense for them to wait and see what happens from that fight before making their move for Joshua. That makes sense, doesn't it?
For them, it does. That's their rationale. We'll see what happens.
Well, listen, either way, I think we're going to get these fights next year. We've already been getting them this year, so we're definitely going to continue on.
Oh, I mean, look at the fights we've had this year. It's been phenomenal. I mean, both Riyadh season's been unbelievable. We've had brilliant shows, not just shows that Queensbury put on, but some really good shows in the UK. It's been exciting times. It's been really, boxing's really, really on a high, really on a high, and that's why I just got a little bit, thing with as you mentioned as we started the talk sport thing, when the comparison between what with Jake and Mike Tyson, I just felt that was it needs to be said. Needs to be said.
Yeah. No, I thought it was quite interesting. Like I said to you, I felt that Goldstein was. I don't think they was blaming you, but I think they were talking to you, so they were looking for kind of answers, and you delivered one of the best kind of comebacks I've probably heard with your comment about Tottenham in the Champions League, which was quite brilliant, Frank, to be fair.
Not that I'm biased or anything.
Obviously not. Obviously not. Frank, could you just clear that up from yesterday about there was a post that went out regarding Sam Notes and Beretta.
It was a mistake.
A mistake. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. He's still on the card on the 7th against Walsh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I saw it come up and I just thought I'd ask you about that. But your show is quickly approaching on Frank. So yeah, a very good card there you've put together just before Christmas.
It's a cracker, isn't it? If you pardon the pun. I mean, it is. It's a really good show. There's some really good, even money matches on there, and I'm looking forward to it. Really good fights. Some really good fights on there.
Absolutely. Have you started? Obviously, I'm assuming you have started to plan for the first quarter of 2025, Frank. Are you going with any shows in January, Frank?
Yes, we're pretty close to announcing that big show we're going to do up north. We've got obviously we're coming to the end of our contracts with TNT, so we've got some dates on there. Then we kick off in April on our new venture, and there'll be some big shows that we'll be looking to obviously to continue what we've been doing as we built boxing up on, as it was BT and now TNT, to get involved and show our worth on the zone.
Frank, with all the people that you were working with or currently are working with TNT, what kind of happens? Is there going to be some sort of merge with the talent and people that were involved in TNT?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I mean, obviously, you've got a lot of their own people working on their shows, and they got some good people there, and there's some great people, some really good, talented people at TNT. Some really good, some really good. I think a couple of them are the best in the business.
We shall wait and see. Frank, the reports of Chisora and Jarrell Miller, is that close to being announced? Is that still in the works? What's going on there?
My sort of mantra for the last probably nearly 2 years now is to not even until they're signed, don't announce them. Gone are the days where you could and do a deal on the phone, and it was done, and the person you'd done the deal with was good, and you could announce it. We're in a totally different world now. So until they're signed, they're not on.
Well, that should be look. Listen, if that fight is to take place, like I said, I'm just going from the reports. If that is, then that should be it should be quite interesting between those two.
I mean, if that's something when you think about that fight. I mean, I think the press conferences would be fun and whatever. This is the fella, by the way, that I was saying should have retired 2 years ago. So he obviously got a great win last time out in a cracking fight. I mean, him and Joe Joyce, all the fights that have been going, but that was a bloody good fight. So, styles, as I say, make fights. And I mean, if that fight happened between him and him and Gerald, that would be a bloody, that would be that would be a good fight. No doubt about that. No doubt about that.
All right, we'll wait and see news on that. Frank, did you see Oliver McCall back in the ring recently?
Yeah, very sad, very sad, very sad. When I was partners with Don King, I'll go back to when he beat Lennox, and we had a massive, massive bet on him, Don King and myself, for that fight. I remember that. I remember that. When was that? That was in the 90s, early 90s, and I remember we Lennox was a massive favourite. We won a nice few quid, and I remember we donated 100 grand to Great Ormond Street Hospital from that. That's how much we fancied him, and he did him. Emmanuel Stewart trained him for that, and did him with the shot that they were working on. And obviously Lennox reversed that a few years later. But to see him in the ring at this age is, yes, he's no different than seeing Mike Tyson, is it? It's not right. It's not right. It's bad.
It was, yeah. I mean, look, regardless of people's thoughts on the Tyson Jake Paul, obviously that was on a huge scale, but seeing kind of the capacity they were fighting in as well.
Where did it take place, that fight, Cook?
It took place. I'm not actually sure where. Oh, in Nashville.
I don't understand how these states can license these guys at this age. I don't get it. I really don't understand how they can do that. It's not right.
You'd have a shout in that then, Frank, wouldn't you?
Sorry?
Getting licensed over there. I said you'd have a shout in that, wouldn't you?
Oh, well, I'm past it, mate. They wouldn't license me now. I mean, God help us. Can you imagine if I went in there and went through the tests and everything to be licensed? Mind you, look at some of them. If I had to have all the tests and that, God, they would, they'd be to go and claim the insurance money before off all over.
What do you generally think? Because I spoke to him about this yesterday, yeah, and I think it's ridiculous. But Eddie Hearn actually wants to fight Oscar De La Hoya, who I think, and we know Oscar De La Hoya is a sixth division world champion, would actually batter Hearn. But he's actually up for doing it. He said if he was paid right, he would 100% fight him. I mean, what's going on here, Frank?
Well, exactly. Well, look, how old's Eddie? Was he 40?
45.
He's 45. And look, what's Oscar now?
51.
God, yeah. But again, it's like the YouTubers, isn't it? They're old YouTubers, and well, if they were going to fight each other, it'd be I don't know about that one. Only if I could be the referee.
Honestly, that would put the ice on the cake. But I spoke to Oscar a couple of times in Riyadh last week, and he's like, whether he's just saying it just for the whatever banter or whatever, but he's like, I'll take 2 months out to train for Eddie Hearn. I'm thinking, why are they talking like this?
Well, if they're going to do that, if they get that on, then I'll be the ring card boy, and Oscar can lend me his thong.
Well, it's 2025, Frank, so I'm sure that'll be acceptable.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure it'd be acceptable. But yeah, I mean, look, the marquee event now we're looking towards is the 21st of December, Frank, and
yeah, look, let's get the serious business. Get down to serious. I mean, these are meaningful historical fights. Meaningful fights. The first fight was just unbelievable. First unification fight of the 21st century. 4 belts on the line. And, it was a very close fight, fag paper in it, decision, it's split decision with the judges. A lot of people, it split people as well. A lot of people really felt Usyk got it. Whatever way, it was a close fight, and this is gonna be a great fight because these two guys are very proud men. They've shown what warriors they are in the first fight. They gave everything. Whether you like Tyson or you like Usyk, it doesn't matter. It takes two to make a great fight, and those two guys give everything in that ring. And it's going to be about who it's for me, the fight's going to be about who it's taken the most out of, because that was a tough fight for both of them.
Tyson doesn't think he has to do a lot more than what he did in that first fight. What do you think about it? I've spoken to him a couple of times.
I agree with him.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I just think I can't get out at that seventh round where he just got caught with that shot on the nose, and he just changed the dynamic of the fight. Tyson sort of lost his focus, and then obviously had a real bad ninth round. Got through the 10th and 11th, he won the 12th round. He was back into it by the end of the fight. It was a fight of two halves. That's how I see the fight. And for me, I think when having seen both of them immediately after fighting the dressing room, and it definitely, in my opinion, took more out of Alexandrov than it did out of Tyson. But they've had quite a while to recuperate. They'll be back in, obviously back in on that night. They're both training very, very, very hard. They've obviously, been and sharing those 12 rounds. Both of them will feel they know their strengths and the weaknesses of the opponent. But for me, it's who can carry out the adjustments that need to be carried out to have an emphatic win. And if Tyson, which I believe he can, I believe I think he's got it to do it. I think he will come through this fight. For me, again, Usyk, the start of that fight came out on the front foot. As soon as that first bell went in the first round, he came out and took the fight to Tyson in that first round. And I can see him doing that again. He won't want to be on the back foot against Tyson, that's for sure.
We're literally just less than 1 month away from that, and that's
going to fly by. I mean, we're all looking for it, and Tyson's looking well over there. He's training in Malta. Great reports back from sparring at the moment, so I'm quietly confident he'll do the business.
Frank, when are we going to see Fabio Wardley out next?
In the new year. In the new year, we had a couple of conversations. I met with his manager last week, and we've got a plan.
Would he be on that card in Riyadh?
No, I doubt it.
Okay. Did you see John Fury and Darren Till the other day, Frank?
I didn't see it. I heard about it. Yeah, I didn't see it.
Well, look, it's misfits, so
Yeah. Again, it is what it is. Tommy's found a real niche, and I did an interview the other day, and they were talking about. I said, he's earned a lot of money from what he does. From his appearances on Love Island and all the the social media and everything, and that's it. Good luck to them. They're doing what they got to do, but at least they're young guys. At least they're younger guys. But what's he done, Darren Till? I know he's UFC, but I mean,
he's in the UFC, and then he had.
No, but he's coming up for a string of losses, isn't he? I'm sure someone told me that. I don't know for what it is, but yeah.
But he's delved into boxing now, and I find this quite intriguing. Obviously, the press conference the other day was just, whatever was going on. But as a fight, I thought it's quite interesting to see what Darren Till does as a boxer. Not predominantly, obviously, known as a boxer, but we'll see. But I heard you saying, Frank, about in money comparison, what Tommy Fury would be earning for like 4s and 6 rounders compared to what he would have earned in them fights with Jake Paul, KSI, and even this fight with Darren Till. I mean, the money is just.
Well, it is, but it's because of partly for Tommy, but at that time, at that moment in time, it was Jake. I mean, Jake is Jake's he generates people watching him fight, and that's what happened in that fight. And the fact that there was a British interest and made it work.
Okay. Well, Frank, listen, much
I mean,
appreciated.
they're not. I mean,
Oh, sorry.
the great look. They give everything they got, but they're not fights that you're not on the edge of your seat fights. They've not been on your edge of your seat fights, have they?
Which fights are you talking about?
Any of them. I'm not being, they're not fights that well, not for me anyway. But them, when I started out in boxing, I was involved in what they called the unlicensed fights back then, and there was a lot of old guys fought on those shows, and it weren't good for them. It wasn't good for them at all, and the medical aspect certainly wasn't as good as it was certainly until I got involved because I've got lots of got the doctors involved and so forth before I went with the boxing board of control, medical tests and so forth. But it's not, boxing is not a good sport for old men, fighters, that is.
Hmm.
Probably say the same thing about me, but old men.
Well, Bob Arum's nearly 100, Frank, so you're all right, aren't you?
Yeah, like near 100. Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah. All right, Frank. Have you got anything else you'd like to add before you go, Frank?
No, anything else happening? What else? I tell you what I would like to see. I'd like to see Chantel in with Katie. I'd like to see that rematch.
Yeah. Obviously a great fight. I mean, that was kind of the fight of the night, if you so by a stretch. That rematch between Serrano and Taylor, which Taylor edged. But yeah, I mean, there's a fair shout here for Chantel Cameron to have her trilogy with Katie Taylor now because that fight obviously was meant to have happened. It didn't happen for whatever reason. So yeah, are you going to be pushing for that, Frank, for Chantel?
Well, I mean, obviously that's a conversation that will happen with Eddie. It's a natural fight, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great fight though, wasn't it, Serrano and Taylor?
Oh, Blake, what you know what happened? My signal went down in the third round of the fight, and I never got, and I didn't see the any of the stuff till the next morning. I was pissed off. I sort of I was awake. I had a couple of calls, late calls, and I started watching. As you do, flipping through the channel. Right, I'm going to go and watch this. And then when I lost the bloody signal, so I was a bit, you know.
Well,
Anyway,
my Netflix crashed that night. I was in Saudi
yeah, well,
Arabia.
that's what I mean. Well, that's what happened when it
Yeah, it
crashed.
crashed. I mean, the sheer amount of people that were obviously tuned into it, this was possibly going to be a possibility, but yeah, mine did actually crash halfway through the Taylor fight.
It's That's an exciting time. But we in boxing, we've got some great stuff coming up. I know all of us, all the fights we're talking about that are going on sort of, as I said earlier, on our shows, other promoters, and certainly Riyadh season. I mean, it's really exciting times for boxing. Boxing's never been so exciting.
And I think next year's going to get a whole lot better.
Yeah,
Agree?
it will be. It will be. Yeah, will be. What's happening, especially with us and some of these young fighters that we've invested in, and they've gone in and shown what they're all about in the rings. So there's going to be some great opportunities for them, and I believe we're going to get a few more world champions.
Okay, Frank, thank you very much for your time. We'll catch up with you probably next in, yeah, your show Fight Week is approaching week after next, isn't it, for
Yeah, yeah.
7th? So we'll catch up around that sort of time.
We will speak then, my friend. So let's say pop in tomorrow.
Yep, see you tomorrow up the Arsenal against Nottingham Forest tomorrow. So yeah, let's see if we can get our season back on track.
Well, we've got a bit more. Looking at the fixture list, we've got on paper easier games than we had in the run. Plus, Odegaard's back.
We've had a ridiculous run in after 11, 12 games or whatever it's 11 games.
Yeah, we lost some players, but we still, we're still a striker short.
Yes, as we have been for quite some time.
Yeah. Anyway.
Right.
All right, my son.
Thank
We'll be
you
good.
very much. And speak to you soon. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Co. Tell me.